Let me ask you something. If someone told you that the way you've been trying to keep a man by being sweet, by being available, by doing everything right, is actually the very thing quietly pushing him away, would you believe them? Most women wouldn't. And that's exactly the problem. Because here's what nobody's telling you. The things that feel like love, the constant check-ins, the adjusting yourself to keep the peace, the bending over backwards just to make him comfortable, those things don't make a man fall deeper. They make him feel comfortable. And comfort, as beautiful as it sounds, is not the same as desire. Comfort is what you feel around furniture. Desire is what wakes a man up at 3 in the morning thinking about someone he can't stop wanting. So if you've ever wondered why you gave a man everything and still felt like it wasn't enough, if you've ever poured yourself into a relationship, been patient, been kind, been understanding, and still watched him slowly drift, this video is for you. Because today I'm going to break down 5 specific things that when you do them consistently and authentically, make a man feel like living without you is genuinely unimaginable. Not because you've manipulated him, not because you've manipulated him, not because you've played games, but because you've become something rare, something real, and something he knows deep down he cannot afford to lose. Now, before we get to the 5 things, I need to reframe something, because if I don't, the rest of this video won't hit the way it's supposed to. Most people come into conversations like this with the wrong question. They're asking, what do I need to do to make him stay? And the moment that question is your starting point, you're already operating from the wrong energy. Because that question puts him in the center of your world. And it puts you in the position of someone chasing approval. And no matter how quietly you chase, men feel it. They feel when you're adjusting yourself to fit what you think they want. They feel when your confidence is contingent on their response. And that feeling, whether they can articulate it or not, is what slowly erodes the attraction. Here's a distinction that changes everything. There's a difference between being someone a man wants to be with and being someone a man cannot imagine being without. Being wanted is temporary. It rises and falls with moods, with circumstances, with how new something feels. But being indispensable, that's something different. That's when you've built a presence in someone's life that goes so deep that the idea of your absence creates a kind of psychological gravity. And that doesn't come from performing. It doesn't come from strategizing. It comes from who you are, and more specifically, from who you choose to be when you're fully, unapologetically yourself. So the 5 things I'm about to walk you through aren't tricks. They're not manipulation tactics. They're ways of being. They're shifts in how you show up, how you see yourself, and how you allow yourself to be seen. And when they're authentic, when they come from a real place inside of you, they create a connection in a man that goes far beyond surface attraction. They create something he's never quite felt before. And once a man has felt that, he doesn't go looking for a replacement. He protects it. All right, let's get into it. The first thing, and this one challenges almost everything the mainstream tells you to do, is to stop shrinking your ambition to fit his comfort level. I want you to let that land for a second. Stop shrinking your ambition to fit his comfort level. We live in a culture that tells women, almost from the time they're little girls, that being too much is dangerous in love. Too driven, too successful, too focused on your goals, it'll intimidate him. It'll make him feel emasculated. So what do a lot of women do? They minimize. They downplay their accomplishments. They laugh off their achievements so he doesn't feel threatened. And then they wonder why 6 months in, the man they're with stops seeing them as exciting and starts seeing them as just familiar. Here's what's actually happening. A man who is drawn to you in the beginning is drawn, whether he knows it or not, to your energy. And a woman with genuine ambition, with something she's building, with a life that exists beyond the relationship, that woman has a particular kind of energy that is magnetic. It's alive. It has direction. But the moment you start shrinking that energy to keep the peace, you begin to dim the very thing that made you interesting to him in the first place. Think about it like this. Imagine you discover a restaurant that blows your mind. The food is incredible, bold, complex, unlike anything you've had. You go back 3 more times. But then one day you go and everything on the menu has been watered down. The chef changed the recipes to appeal to more people. It's fine now, it's pleasant, but it's not what you fell in love with. You stop going back. Not because something terrible happened, because the thing that made it worth going back is gone. That's what happens when a woman shrinks herself in a relationship. The man might not consciously identify it, but something shifts. The aliveness that made him pay attention starts to fade. And you don't want that. You want to be the restaurant that he drives across town for month after year after decade. I was talking to a woman recently, brilliant woman, had built a business from nothing, was genuinely thriving in her career. She got into a relationship with a man who said all the right things at first, but she noticed early on that when she talked about her work, he seemed uncomfortable. So she started talking about it less. She stopped sharing her wins. She reoriented her schedule around his. And within a year, she looked up and realized she didn't recognize herself. The relationship ended not because he was a terrible person, but because she had become a smaller version of herself trying to hold on to him. And smaller versions of people are harder to love deeply. Don't make yourself smaller. Pursue your goals with full intensity. Talk about what excites you without apologizing for it. Let him see that you are building something, because a man who is right for you will not be threatened by your ambition. He will be inspired by it. And a man who needs you to dim your light to feel good about himself is telling you everything you need to know about his readiness for a real relationship. The practical takeaway here is this: audit your recent behavior. Have you been downplaying things to keep the peace? Have you been holding back excitement about your own life because you didn't want to seem too much? Start taking up your full space again. Not to perform confidence, not to make a point, but because your real life, your real passion, your real drive, that is one of the most powerful forces of genuine attraction that exists. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the second thing builds directly on the first, but it goes somewhere a little more unexpected. The second thing is this: become genuinely, not performatively, emotionally self-sufficient. And I want to be very careful here, because this is one of those ideas that gets distorted constantly. Emotional self-sufficiency does not mean being cold. It does not mean being unavailable. It does not mean pretending you don't need anything or anyone. What it means is that your emotional baseline, your sense of security, your peace of mind, your fundamental confidence doesn't depend on his reaction, his validation, or his consistency in any given moment. This is one of the most underestimated things in relationship psychology. Men are extraordinarily sensitive to emotional dependency even when they can't name it. They feel when a woman's mood rises and falls based entirely on how he's behaving. They feel when her happiness is fundamentally contingent on his approval. And while a man might feel flattered by that level of attention in the very beginning, over time, it becomes a pressure he doesn't know how to carry. It becomes quietly exhausting. And exhausting is not the feeling you want him associating with you. On the other hand, when a man encounters a woman who is genuinely at peace with herself, who can experience disappointment without falling apart, who can give him space without turning it into a crisis, who can communicate a need directly without collapsing if he doesn't respond the way she hoped, that woman creates something in him. She creates respect. And respect in romantic love is not the opposite of passion. It's the foundation of it. You cannot sustain deep desire for someone you do not deeply respect. Let me give you an analogy. Think about people you've worked with professionally. There's usually one or two people on a team who are exceptional. They do their job with confidence. They don't need constant reassurance. And when something goes wrong, they handle it. They don't panic. They don't need to be managed emotionally. And what happens? Everyone wants to work with them. Everyone trusts them. They become indispensable, not because they demanded that status, but because they earned it through who they are. The same dynamic exists in love. A man wants to know that the woman he's with is solid, that she has a life that sustains her even when he can't be there, that she has friendships, interests, practices, a spiritual or emotional life that holds her when things are uncertain. Because when a man knows that, he doesn't fear intimacy with you. He leans into it. He knows that loving you doesn't make him responsible for your entire emotional world. And that freedom is one of the most attractive things you can give him. And here's the counterintuitive piece. Women who are emotionally self-sufficient are also the ones men work hardest to show up for, because it's not guaranteed. When a man knows your peace doesn't depend on his text, he actually sends the text. When he knows you can go a few days without hearing from him and be completely fine, he thinks about you more, not less, because you are a person he's choosing, not a person he's managing. So the mindset shift here is to invest deeply, and I mean seriously invest in your own inner life, your therapy, your friendships, your faith, your creative outlets, your physical wellness, your sense of purpose, not as a strategy to attract men, but because it's the right way to live. And the byproduct of living that way, you become the kind of woman a man looks at and thinks, I cannot afford to take her for granted. All right, moving into the third thing. And this one surprises most people when they first hear it. The third thing is make him feel genuinely, specifically, profoundly seen. And I want to stress those words: genuinely, specifically, profoundly. Here's what most people do in relationships. They give generic compliments. They say, you're so smart, or you're so strong, or you're so amazing. And the person on the receiving end smiles and says thank you, but nothing lands. Because generic compliments, even sincere ones, don't create a feeling of being truly known. They just create a feeling of being liked. And being liked and being deeply seen are two completely different experiences. Being deeply seen means that someone has paid attention to the parts of you that you don't advertise, the things beneath the surface, the private victories, the quiet fears, the things you're proud of that you've never said out loud. When someone reflects those things back to you, when they say, I notice how much it means to you when your work actually makes a difference for someone. I can see how that drives you. Something happens inside. A wall comes down. A depth of warmth is unlocked that generic affection simply cannot reach. Men carry a lot inside them that never gets acknowledged. The pressure to provide and perform, the internal narratives they carry about whether they're enough, the things they sacrifice quietly and never mentioned. Most men go through entire relationships, even good relationships, without feeling truly seen by their partner, without feeling like someone looked past the role he plays and saw the person underneath. And when a woman does that, when she actually sees a man in that way and reflects it back to him, he experiences something that most men have never felt before. And it bonds him to her in a way that is almost impossible to replicate. I was talking to someone once who had been in a relationship for about 8 months. He told me something that's always stayed with me. He said, she sees things in me that I didn't even know were there. She notices things I never even said. He wasn't talking about compliments. He was talking about being witnessed, about having someone who was truly paying attention. He said, and I remember this clearly, I don't know how to explain it. I just know I can't imagine not having her. That's not a small thing. That's everything. That's the feeling that turns a man from someone who's dating you into someone who simply cannot let you go. So how do you build this? You build it through attention, real attention, not scrolling through your phone while he talks, not waiting for your turn to speak, actually listening for what he's saying and for what's underneath what he's saying. Ask follow-up questions. Remember the small things. Bring them back up weeks later. Say things like, I've been thinking about what you said the other day about your dad. How are you feeling about that now? That kind of attention is rare, and rarity creates value. Always. The fourth thing, and this one challenges perhaps the most deeply held belief in conventional relationship advice, is that you need to stop avoiding conflict. I know. The message out there is be understanding, be patient, be accommodating, don't start arguments, be easy to be with. And there's truth in that. No one wants to be with someone who manufactures drama out of nothing. But here's what that advice leaves out, and it's critical. Conflict, when it's handled with maturity and directness, is not the enemy of love. Avoiding conflict is the enemy of love. Here's why. When you consistently suppress what you actually feel, when you nod and smile and it's find your way through things that genuinely hurt you, two things happen. First, resentment builds. And resentment is like carbon monoxide in a relationship. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but it's filling the room. And one day, something small happens and the explosion is completely out of proportion and neither one of you fully understands why. Second, and this is the piece that almost no one talks about, a man stops respecting you. Not consciously, not cruelly, but somewhere in his psychology, a person who never pushes back, starts to feel like someone without a real self. And a person without a real self is someone you like, but not someone you fall irrevocably in love with. Think about every person in your life that you deeply admire. I'll bet you most of them are people who can tell you hard truths with love. People who will disagree with you when they disagree, who won't just go along to make you comfortable. You respect them more for it. You trust them more. You take their good opinion of you more seriously because you know they're not just handing it out to keep the peace. Men feel the same about the women in their lives. When you can say calmly and firmly, I need to talk about something that bothered me, and then actually talk about it without attacks, without drama, but without backing down either, you show him something that very few women have ever shown him. You show him that you have a backbone, that your warmth is real because your standards are real, that your love is valuable because it comes attached to self-respect. The practical shift here is to get comfortable with the phrase, I need to talk about something. Not as an attack, not as a performance, but as a quiet, direct acknowledgement that something matters to you and you're not going to pretend otherwise. The more you practice that, the more real you become to him. And the more real you are to him, the harder it is for him to imagine filling your space with someone else. Now here's where we arrive at the fifth thing. And I've saved this one for last because it's the most powerful and it's also the most misunderstood. The fifth thing is this: become his safest place, but not by becoming soft. Become his safest place by being completely real. Let me explain what I mean. There's a version of being a safe place that a lot of people think about, which is being endlessly agreeable, never challenging him, always being warm and gentle and available. And while gentleness matters, that's not what I mean by safe. What I mean by safe is something much more specific. A safe place is somewhere a man can be completely honest, where he can admit uncertainty without losing your respect, where he can talk about his failures without fear of being used against him later, where he can show you a soft side, vulnerability, insecurity, fear, without worrying that it's going to change how you see him. In a world where men are constantly expected to perform strength, finding a woman who creates that space is genuinely revolutionary. And the men who find it, they do not let it go. But here's the key, and this is where people get it wrong. You cannot create that safety by being endlessly soft yourself. Because if you're always agreeable, if you never have hard edges, if you've never shown him that you can handle difficult truths, he won't actually believe the space is safe. He'll know on some level that if he showed you something truly real, something raw or uncomfortable, you might not know what to do with it. So he keeps performing for you the same way he performs for everyone else. And the relationship, no matter how warm it feels, stays at a surface level. Safety, real emotional safety, is actually created through your realness. When he has seen you be direct, when he's seen you handle uncomfortable things without falling apart, when he's seen you disagree with him and still love him, when he's seen you mess up and own it without spiraling, then he knows. Then he knows that this is a place where reality is allowed. And when reality is allowed, love goes deeper than it has any other way to go. I had a client, I'll call her Nadia, who came to me frustrated that her boyfriend of 2 years never opened up to her. She felt like she was always the emotional one, always the vulnerable one, and he just kept everything inside. So we looked at the patterns, and what we found was that every time he tried to bring up something vulnerable, Nadia, out of love, genuinely, would immediately try to fix it, would immediately reassure him. Sometimes would get a little anxious herself, and he would shut back down. Not because he didn't trust her, but because the space felt too fragile for his weight. Once she learned to sit with his discomfort instead of rushing to dissolve it, once she could hear hard things without her own anxiety taking over, he started to open up in ways he'd never opened up with anyone. And within a few months, he told her something that she shared with me that I will never forget. He said, "I don't feel like I have to be anybody else with you." That's it. That's the thing. That's what makes a man never want to live without you. Not the dinners, not the attraction, not even the love, as beautiful as all of that is. It's the feeling that he does not have to perform a version of himself when he's with you. That he is accepted, challenged, and genuinely seen all at the same time. So let's bring this all together, because each of these 5 things is connected. When you refuse to shrink your ambition, you bring a life force to the relationship that keeps it alive. When you build genuine emotional self-sufficiency, you earn his deepest respect and free him to love you without fear. When you make him feel truly and specifically seen, you create a bond that goes beyond what words can fully explain. When you stop avoiding conflict and start engaging it with maturity, you show him that your love is real because your self-respect is real. And when you become his safest place, not through softness, but through radical authenticity, you give him something that most men spend their entire lives searching for without ever finding. None of these things are performances. None of them are strategies. They are ways of being. They are choices about who you want to be in love and who you want to be in your own life. And when you choose them genuinely, consistently, from the inside out, something extraordinary happens. A man looks at his life and he cannot find you in it, and the image doesn't work. The picture is incomplete. You have become not just someone he loves, but someone he needs in the truest, healthiest, most beautiful sense of that word. And I want to leave you with one thought before you go. Love is not something you earn by doing the right things, but you do have to become someone worth staying for. And the beautiful thing, the thing I hope you carry out of this video, is that becoming that person is not actually about him at all. It's about you. It's about building a life so full, a character so grounded, a presence so real that love finds you in its fullest form and recognizes that you are ready for it. If this video spoke to you, let me know in the comments below. Tell me which of the 5 things hit closest to home. I read every comment. If you haven't subscribed yet to the Psychology of Love, now is the time. We go deep on this channel. We don't do surface level. We talk about the real mechanics of connection, attraction, and the kind of love that actually lasts. Subscribe, hit the like button, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.